The day humanity walked away. The Galactic Council chamber was a marvel of engineering, a dome of shimmering material that pulsed with soft, golden light. Its vast expanse housed representatives from hundreds of species, each occupying seats arranged in concentric circles, all facing the central podium where matters of galactic importance were debated. The room hummed with overlapping voices, alien languages converging into a chaotic orchestra of diplomacy. But today was different. Today, silence reigned. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Daniel Reeve, Earth's senior representative, his hands clasped behind his back, his face unreadable. His dark blue diplomatic uniform bore the insignia of the Terran Accord, an emblem that, until now, symbolized cooperation. For decades, humanity had worked tirelessly to earn its place among the stars. They had played by the rules, obeyed the laws, and endured endless restrictions imposed upon them by those who feared their rapid progress. But now, as Reeve faced the assembled council members, his patience had run out. First Speaker Lurvax Rill, a towering being of iridescent tendrils, broke the silence. His voice, amplified by the chamber's translation systems, resonated with barely concealed condescension. Ambassador Reeve, we recognize your presence. The Council has gathered today to address the increasingly reckless expansion of humanity's technological pursuits. Your latest developments in quantum displacement exceed what is permissible for a species of your level. The Council finds it necessary to. Reeve cut him off. A rare move. A bold move. Enough. Gasps rippled through the chamber. No one interrupted the first speaker. Ever. But Reeve didn't care. Not anymore. For years, the Council had claimed that humanity was not ready, that their advancements in space travel, energy manipulation, and artificial intelligence were too dangerous. Every breakthrough Earth made had been met with another bureaucratic wall, another restriction designed to keep them beneath the so-called elder races. Yet despite it all, humanity had continued pushing forward, finding ways to outthink, outmaneuver, and outpace the very species who sought to hold them back. And now, they wanted humanity to surrender their greatest achievement, a quantum displacement drive that could render traditional space travel obsolete. It was an engine that bent reality itself, allowing ships to traverse vast distances in an instant, unrestricted by gravitational fields or hyperspace lanes. It was a game changer, and the Council knew it. Reeve's voice was cold, his words deliberate. For 30 years, we have sat in this chamber and listened to your endless excuses. For 30 years, we have abided by your treaties, despite their blatant bias against us. We accepted your trade limitations. We accepted your territorial restrictions. We accepted your authority. And still, you treat us like children playing with fire. Tension crackled in the air. Ambassador Kel Revoth of the Selthuri Dominion, a reptilian being with piercing silver eyes, leaned forward. These regulations exist for the safety of all species, including your own, she hissed. Unchecked power leads to destruction. We have seen it before. Reeve met her gaze, unflinching. Spare me the lectures. We both know the truth. You don't fear our destruction. You fear our dominance. You fear a future where humans are no longer beneath you. The chamber erupted in voices, some shouting in outrage, others whispering in realization. A few representatives, the younger races, the ones who had suffered under the Council's rule, remained silent, watching with keen interest. The first speaker's form flickered, his tendrils curling inward in agitation. Ambassador Reeve, you will cease this hostility at once. The Council will not tolerate defiance. Reeve smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Oh, I'm not here to negotiate. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small data crystal, placing it on the podium for all to see. Immediately, security drones tensed, their energy fields crackling in warning. The mere gesture of presenting unauthorized information in the Council chamber was enough to trigger defensive measures. Reeve ignored them. This, he said, gesturing to the crystal, is a formal declaration, effective immediately. Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council. We reject your authority. We reject your treaties. We reject your control. We are done. Stunned silence. For a moment, no one spoke. No one moved. It was as if the very fabric of reality had shifted. And then, chaos. A cacophony of voices erupted at once. Some demanded an explanation. Others called for immediate sanctions. A few, those who had long envied humanity's resilience, watched with knowing smiles. The first speaker's glow pulsed erratically. You cannot do this. The treaties are meaningless, Reeve interrupted. They were never about peace. They were about control. And you will not control us any longer. Admiral Fulzorak, the Council's highest-ranking military officer, stood abruptly. His crystalline exoskeleton gleamed under the chamber's light. If you defy the Council, you will face consequences, Reeve. We have fleets positioned throughout human space. Do you truly believe you can stand against us? Reeve's grin widened. Oh, Admiral, we've been preparing for this day for years. The real question is, do you truly believe you can stop us? And with that, he turned and walked toward the exit. The security drones did not move. The council chamber descended into panic, and as the great doors slid shut behind him, Reeve allowed himself a final, satisfied thought. Earth was ready, and the galaxy would never be the same. The shockwave of defiance. The Galactic Council chamber had seen countless debates, endless negotiations, and the rise and fall of entire civilizations, but never had it witnessed something like this. Humanity had just walked away. Ambassador Daniel Reeve's footsteps echoed in the long corridor outside the chamber as he departed, his back straight, his pace deliberate. He could already hear the uproar behind him. Alien voices raised in disbelief, in anger, in fear, but none of it mattered anymore. The decision had been made, and nothing could reverse it. For the first time in its history, Earth was free. Back inside the chamber, chaos reigned. First speaker Lurvaxril's iridescent form pulsed violently, his tendrils twisting in a display of barely restrained rage. Never had a species dared to challenge the Council so openly, let alone declare their independence. The implications were catastrophic. This is an unacceptable breach of intergalactic order. Lurvaxril bellowed, his voice reverberating through the chamber. Humanity cannot simply walk away. They are bound by Council law. Ambassador Kel Revoth of the Selthari Dominion's reptilian scales darkened, a sign of deep unease. And if they refuse to acknowledge our authority, if they resist enforcement, a grave silence settled over the chamber. Admiral Fulzorek's crystalline exoskeleton pulsed faintly as he leaned forward. Then we bring them back in line. Murmurs rippled through the council representatives. Some nodded in agreement, but others, especially those from the younger races, exchanged wary glances. They had seen what humanity was capable of. They had witnessed Earth's unrelenting progress despite every limitation placed upon them. To challenge them now was to invite something far worse than mere rebellion. Still, Lurvaxril had no intention of letting this stand. Mobilize the peacekeeping fleets, he ordered. Effective immediately, all human ships are to be detained. Any human colony refusing to comply with council orders will be sanctioned. Their defiance will not be tolerated. But even as he spoke, something unexpected happened. The chamber's main holographic display flickered. A new transmission was being forced into the Council's secure network. And it was coming from Earth. The message. A massive image of President Eleanor Voss of the United Terran Coalition appeared above the central podium. She was calm, composed, deadly in her quiet confidence. Her steel-gray eyes swept across the assembled representatives before she spoke. Members of the Galactic Council, you have just witnessed our official withdrawal. This is not a request. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of fact. Some council members bristled at her tone. Others remained motionless, waiting. For 30 years, humanity has honored your treaties, obeyed your laws, and endured your endless restrictions. We accepted your oversight, even when it crippled our ability to grow. We played by your rules. And yet, you never intended to let us rise beyond the limits you imposed." She leaned forward slightly, her presence filling the chamber with an undeniable gravity. "That ends today." First Speaker Lurvaxril's tendrils coiled. "Madam President, your people are in violation of intergalactic law. Do you truly believe you can defy the Council without consequence?" Voss smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Oh, we're not defying you." She leaned back, completely at ease. "We are simply leaving, and there is nothing you can do to stop us." Admiral Fulzoric's crystalline hands clenched into fists. "Do not be so sure of that, President Voss. Our fleets are already being removed from our borders," Voss interrupted. "Even as we speak, our ships are dismantling your peacekeeping outposts, your monitoring stations, your forward bases. We have tolerated their presence long enough. We will tolerate them no longer." Lurvaxril's glow dimmed in sudden realization. That would require an army. Voss finished for him. Yes, a very large, very well-prepared one. Gasps erupted across the chamber. The implications were staggering. Somehow, without the Council's knowledge, humanity had secretly mobilized an entire military force capable of expelling the Council's fleets. And if they had been hiding something like this, what else were they hiding? Ambassador Kel Ravoth's forked tongue flickered in anxiety. "President Voss, if this is true, if you have an armed force capable of opposing the Council, then I must ask, how long have you been preparing for this?" Voss's smile did not fade. "Since the moment you tried to keep us small." Silence. Absolute, crushing silence. Then, alarms. The chamber's security systems flashed red as an emergency report appeared on the holographic display. Fleet activity detected. Multiple quantum displacement signatures originating from human-controlled space. Thousands of human ships exiting subspace simultaneously. Lurvaxril's tendrils curled inward in horror. "They're moving." Fulzoric's crystalline form pulsed erratically. This is impossible." Voss's expression remained unshaken. "No," she said simply. "This is what happens when you underestimate humanity." And with that, the transmission cut out. The tipping point. Panic gripped the Council. For years, they had believed humanity was contained, that their advancements were being carefully monitored, their expansion regulated. Now, it was clear that assumption had been catastrophically wrong. In the outer reaches of the galaxy, human fleets materialized from the depths of subspace, their engines glowing like fire against the void. They did not attack. They did not make threats. They simply moved. Ships carrying diplomats, traders, and colonists, entire civilizations worth of humanity's presence, withdrew from Council-controlled space. Trade outposts shut down overnight. Human-built stations deactivated, their corridors dark and lifeless. All communication links severed. Within mere hours, entire sectors of the galaxy were abandoned, left in the sudden vacuum of Earth's departure. And then came the realization. It was not humanity who needed the Council. It was the Council who needed humanity. Medical supplies, advanced electronics, emergency food shipments, all gone. Entire economies began to collapse in real time. Starving colonies sent distress calls, pleading for aid. Planets that relied on human-built infrastructure saw system failures that threatened millions of lives. And for the first time, the Council members asked themselves a terrifying question. What if humanity never comes back? The void left behind. The moment humanity left, the galaxy felt the loss like a collapsing star. For centuries, the Galactic Council had established itself as the ultimate authority, overseeing commerce, law, and military engagements across the known universe. It was a behemoth of bureaucracy, controlling who could trade where, which technologies could be developed, and which species were allowed to rise beyond their perceived limits. They believed they were in control. They were wrong. Within a single galactic cycle, the vast trading networks, supply chains, and economic stability that the Council had taken for granted collapsed overnight. And the realization was terrifying. The markets in chaos. On Market Prime, the largest trading hub in the galaxy, chaos erupted. Thousands of alien merchants, from the insectoid Kirish to the amphibious Tolvari, scrambled to secure what little stock remained. Storefronts once stocked with Earth-made medical supplies, high-yield energy cores, and precision-crafted microprocessors now sat empty. Desperation set in immediately. Auction houses erupted into riots. Entire crates of human technology that once cost a few thousand credits now sold for millions. Council enforcers, normally quick to suppress unrest, stood frozen, because they too understood the truth. Without Earth, the galactic economy was falling apart. Ambassador Tralmik, a veteran negotiator of the Council's Trade Commission, watched in horror from his private chambers overlooking the commercial sector. The data scrolling across his holographic display told a grim story. Medical supply chains down 60%. Industrial production slowed by 40%. Electronic components scarcity at critical levels. He turned to his assistant, a four-armed Yalthine named Shurilak, his voice trembling. This is worse than we thought. I expected disruptions, delays, but... Shurilak's black eyes darted nervously between the reports. Sir, the outer colonies are already reporting casualties. Famine has begun in sectors that relied on Terran agricultural exports and the mechanized production sectors of the Reneri conglomerate. She hesitated. They just declared economic emergency status. They cannot function without human circuit processors. Tralmek's body shuddered in disbelief. Humanity had not just left. They had taken their knowledge, their industry, and their progress with them. And now, the galaxy could not survive without it. The military standoff. The Council's fleets, stationed at strategic points throughout former human territories, found themselves in a new and terrifying reality. They had expected resistance, maybe even small skirmishes with rogue human captains unwilling to obey Earth's orders. What they found instead was silence. A cold, calculated, and deeply unsettling silence. Fleet Commander Zyra Kor, a seasoned warrior from the crystalline Varan Empire, stood aboard her battlecruiser, the Celestial Tyrant, overlooking the now empty trade routes leading into human space. The beacon lights of once busy human starports were dark. There were no patrols, no transmissions, no distress signals. Just the black void of space. She turned to her tactical officer, a four-eyed Zykari strategist named Mavathra. Any sign of them? Zyra Kor asked. Mavathra's elongated fingers glided over the tactical display, scanning for any hidden human movements. But the readings remained unchanged. Negative, Commander, Mavathra said. Their fleets are completely withdrawn. Not a single ship remains in contested zones. Even their deep space relay stations have been deactivated. Zyra Kor felt uneasy. This makes no sense, she muttered. They should be launching countermeasures, engaging in hit-and-run tactics, something. Then, the sensor alarms blared. A single human warship emerged from quantum displacement, materializing at the edge of the system. The UTC Aegis, a battleship twice the size of any known Council vessel, with energy signatures unlike anything they had seen before. Zyra Kor's blood ran cold. By the stars. The Aegis did not fire. It did not hail them. It merely hovered, a silent sentinel, observing them, daring them. A transmission came through, brief, clear, and absolute. Turn back. There will be no second warning. The Council fleet, once so sure of its authority, hesitated. Then, one by one, they retreated. For the first time in millennia, a species had stood against the Council's might, and the Council backed down. The political fallout. Back on Capital Station, the heart of the Galactic Council, leaders from all major factions met in emergency session, The mood was grim. First Speaker Lervaxrill sat in silence, his luminous tendrils dim and lifeless. The once proud council now faced its greatest crisis, a crisis of its own making. Ambassador Kel Revoth of the Seltheri Dominion broke the silence. The truth is undeniable. Her reptilian tongue flickered. We are bleeding. The colonies are collapsing. Our fleets are paralyzed. And the humans, they are watching. Ambassador Tralmec leaned forward. We must act. We must bring them back into the fold. First Speaker Lervaxrill lifted his gaze. And how do you propose we do that, Tralmec? We cannot force them. We cannot threaten them. A new voice spoke up. Chancellor Yorven of the Rim Worlds Coalition, one of the few factions that had always been sympathetic toward humanity. Then perhaps, he said, we should ask ourselves a different question. The room turned toward him. What if we don't need them to return, but rather for us to change? Silence. Deep, contemplative silence. For thousands of years, the Council had held absolute power. They had dictated the fate of entire species. But in a matter of hours, a single act of defiance had shattered that illusion. Now the question remained, could they survive without humanity? Or had they lost them forever? The reckoning begins. The Galactic Council chamber, once the unshakable core of interstellar governance, had become a war zone of political infighting. The shockwave of humanity's departure had thrown the entire order into disarray. And now the leaders of the galaxy sat in silent dread, realizing they had underestimated humanity in ways they had never imagined possible. But this was just the beginning. The economic collapse spreads. In the days following humanity's withdrawal, the economic catastrophe worsened. Trade that had once moved seamlessly between species now ground to a halt. The Council had long imposed harsh tariffs and trade restrictions on humanity, never realizing that their own supply chains had grown dangerously dependent on Terran ingenuity and infrastructure. On the resource-rich world of Exilus IV, home to the largest shipyard complex in Council-controlled space, workers gathered around massive deactivated assembly lines. Hundreds of partially built warships, cargo haulers, and exploration cruisers sat in limbo. Their construction halted, not because of a lack of raw materials, but because they were missing crucial Terran-built components. Quantum processors, advanced reactor cores, gravitic stabilizers, all human-made. The foreman, a towering Morlakian engineer named Threxval, stood in front of the holo display, his 6 arms folded as he scanned the crippling losses on his production reports. His chief logistics officer, a thin insectoid Zerthal, spoke in frantic tones. We are facing ruin. Threx. We cannot replace the Terran components, and we lack the expertise to replicate them. Our shipyards will be shut down within the month. Threxval's hardened gaze lingered on the numbers. And our buyers. Panicked, Zerthal admitted. The fleet command wants more ships. The trade guilds want more freighters. Even civilian transport companies are pleading for replacement vessels. Without Terran technology, none of it is possible. Threxval exhaled deeply. Then we do what any sane merchants would do. Zerthal's antennae twitched. And what's that? Threxval turned, his expression grim. We go to the humans and beg. The growing divide in the Council. Back in the Council's high chamber, a deep schism had formed among the member races. The old guard, those who had once viewed humanity as a disruptive force that needed to be controlled, now scrambled to repair the damage, but their arrogance still blinded them to reality. The younger races, however, the ones who had lived under the thumb of Council oppression for millennia, had begun to see the truth. One such leader was Chancellor Yorven, the head of the Rim Worlds Coalition, a loose alliance of independent species that had always held a friendly relationship with humanity. Unlike the major powers, they had relied on open trade with Earth, and their entire economy was now crumbling. Yorven had called an emergency assembly, and his words shook the chamber to its core. For too long, he began, his deep, guttural voice carrying across the hall. This council has treated humanity as an upstart civilization that needed to be tamed. You imposed limits, you dictated their fate, and you took from them without ever considering what they gave us in return. His reptilian eyes swept across the room. And now we see what happens when they are no longer here. The silence was deafening. Ambassador Kel Revoth of the Selthari Dominion sat forward, her claws tapping against the desk in thought. "And what do you suggest, Chancellor?" Yorvin's voice hardened. "I suggest we go to them, not as rulers, not as enforcers, but as equals. And we offer them something the Council has never given them before." First Speaker Lurvaxril scoffed, his tendrils curling in disdain. "And what might that be?" Yorvin met his gaze without fear. "Respect. The fleet that never was." As the political fractures deepened, the Council's military commanders convened in secrecy, desperate to regain control of the situation. Admiral Fulzorek, head of the Council's peacekeeping armada, sat at the war table with his top strategists. They had never believed humanity to be a real threat before, but now they were terrified. A hologram flickered to life, displaying new intelligence reports. "The humans," Fulzorek began, his crystalline hands gripping the table, "have been lying to us." Murmurs filled the war room. "Lying? About what?" one of the officers asked. The display zoomed in on a star map, highlighting sectors that had previously been believed to be empty space. But now, sensor scans revealed massive human installations, entire hidden shipyards and military stations, concealed within deep space anomalies that no Council probe had ever penetrated. "They have entire fleets that we never accounted for," Fulzorek continued. "Battle cruisers with unknown energy signatures, stealth frigates with zero detectable emissions, orbital platforms positioned at strategic points across their borders." One of the younger commanders, a Varin officer, paled. How long have they been building this?" Fulzorek's mandibles tightened. "Decades." Silence. "They knew," he murmured. "They knew from the beginning that this day would come." Another officer, an Eldari tactician, spoke up hesitantly. "Admiral, what do we do?" Fulzorek exhaled slowly, staring at the map. "We stop pretending we can control them. The Council's last chance, with the economy in shambles, the fleets paralyzed, and rebellion brewing among its younger members, the Galactic Council finally faced a harsh truth. Humanity had left, and they had taken the future with them. Now, they had one last chance to fix it. A delegation had to be sent, and not to issue demands, not to impose restrictions, but to ask for help. For the first time in recorded history, the greatest powers of the galaxy had to swallow their pride and seek humanity's forgiveness, and the fate of the entire galactic order would depend on whether or not Earth was willing to listen.